I'm 27 and work in project coordination for a mid-sized tech company. I've been there 5 years now, and it's not glamorous, but it's stable. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment, pay my bills on time, and sometimes help my parents when things get tight. I'm not flashy or dramatic. I just like things to run smoothly. My sister Natalie is 25. She's the kind of person who starts things with fireworks and ends them in smoke. First, it was photography, then interior design, then event planning. Now she's launching a boutique that sells curated thrift pieces and handmade items from local artists. It's in a trendy part of the city, and she talks about it like she's opening the next Anthropologie. My parents are obsessed with her. They say she's brave for chasing her passions. They call it creative courage like it's a badge of honor. When her event planning gig collapsed after 3 months, they said she learned valuable lessons. When I got promoted at work last year, they said good for you and changed the subject. It's always been like this. Natalie is emotional, loud, messy, full of life, as my mom says. When we were kids, she took my bike without asking, crashed it into a fence, and I got blamed for not keeping an eye on her. I was 11. That's been the theme ever since. Natalie creates the mess, and I get handed the broom. A few months ago, she started talking about this boutique idea. At first, it was just Instagram mood boards and late-night texts about vibes. Then she found a small retail space, signed a lease, and my parents gave her a loan to help cover the deposit and renovations. They called it an investment. That word got tossed around a lot. They told me about it over dinner one night, all excited like she was pitching on Shark Tank. Then my dad looked at me and said, "You're great at spreadsheets and planning. Maybe you could help her out with the logistics?" I told them I was happy to give her some advice, but I had a big launch coming up at work and couldn't commit to anything more. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Natalie called me later, crying. Said I never support her dreams. Said it's always been that way. Said I think I'm better than her because I have a job with health insurance. Our mom got involved and said I was being cold. That's her favorite word when I don't cave in. I stuck to my boundary. I didn't get involved. Then the cracks started showing. Natalie misordered the display shelves, wrong size, wrong finish, non-refundable. She forgot about the business insurance entirely. She thought the landlord would just remind her about the second rent installment, which he didn't. She missed the deadline. She had a business partner for a while, her old roommate, Casey, but they had a falling out a week before the soft opening. I never got the full story, but Natalie called it irreconcilable creative visions. Translation, someone realized this was going to be a train wreck and bailed. That was when my phone started blowing up again. Mom said Natalie was overwhelmed and needed someone she could trust. Dad said it was just for a week, just to help her get through the opening. They use that voice people use when they're asking you to help move a body, low, intense, urgent. I said no, not mean, not emotional, just no. I reminded them I had stayed out of it from the start and had my own deadlines to hit. I told them Natalie made her choices. She picked the location, the timeline, the vendors. I wasn't going to swoop in and pretend this was my responsibility. That didn't go over well. Mom said I was watching my sister drown. Dad said I was being heartless. Natalie sent a sad emoji and stopped talking to me. I was tempted to explain myself again, to lay it all out like a case in court. But I didn't. A couple days later, I heard from a mutual friend that the boutique's opening got pushed back. Apparently, Natalie had scheduled 2 different contractors for the same day, and neither one showed up. A shipment of her artisan soaps got delayed because she forgot to confirm the order. The boutique space had half-painted walls, empty shelves, and no signage. Still, she posted an Instagram story saying big things coming, with a sparkle emoji. I stayed quiet. The weird thing is, nothing I'm saying here is exaggerated. If anything, it's toned down. This has been the pattern forever. Natalie jumps, my parents applaud mid-air, and I'm expected to build the safety net every time. But this time, I didn't bring the net. I didn't even bring a pillow. I just stepped aside and let her do it her way. And that's when things really started falling apart. The boutique's soft opening was supposed to happen over the weekend. Natalie had been promoting it for 2 weeks straight on social media, grand opening, local makers, vintage gems, opening Saturday, 11 a.m. sharp. She even made a countdown on her stories and kept posting time-lapse videos of her progress, which was mostly her reorganizing the same 3 racks. By Saturday morning, the place wasn't finished. Not even close. There were half-unpacked boxes stacked behind the front counter. A big empty wall had masking tape where the shelves were supposed to be, but no shelves. A few clothing racks were pushed off to the side, still wrapped in plastic. Price tags were handwritten on sticky notes, some curling off the fabric. The store sign hadn't arrived yet, so she printed out a makeshift banner from a school supply store that said boutique in pink bubble letters. It was taped to the front window with duct tape. People still showed up. Not a lot, but enough that it mattered. A couple of them were local influencers Natalie had tagged in her posts. One brought a friend who asked where the rest of the inventory was. Another asked if there was a launch promo. Someone walked in and asked if the power was out because the lights were dim and one corner still had a construction lamp. Around noon, a vendor showed up asking for payment for a display table Natalie had ordered, a reclaimed wood table with steel legs. It had been delivered the night before, and Natalie hadn't paid the remaining balance. She said she thought it was net 30 terms. It wasn't. The guy stood there waiting, arms crossed, while Natalie scrambled behind the counter trying to log into her banking app. She ended up offering him one of the ceramic bowls she had for sale, which he didn't accept. She called me from the bathroom of the boutique. I picked up and heard the shaky breathing first, then the sniffles, then her voice saying that everything was falling apart and no one was helping her. I asked if she had tried talking to the vendor directly about setting up a payment plan. There was silence, then a snap, "Why can't you just help?" And she hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, it was my mom. She asked if I could just stop by for an hour, help Natalie set up a spreadsheet or something, and maybe talk to some of the customers while Natalie figured things out. I told her what I've told everyone from the beginning. I wasn't involved, I'm not involved, and I've made that clear since day one. Apparently, that didn't stop Natalie from making comments. A mutual friend of ours, Olivia, went by the boutique with her sister and told me later that Natalie had said, loud enough for people nearby to hear, that she had no help setting any of this up, and that some people just don't care unless it's about them. A couple of people in that room know me, including someone I used to work with. One of them texted me that night saying, heard you left your sister high and dry, what's going on? So I sent her screenshots and texts from Natalie from weeks ago, where I told her I couldn't get involved due to my workload. Voice notes where I reminded her this was her timeline, her plan, her choice. I didn't go into detail, just enough to show that this version of the story she was telling wasn't true. Word started getting around after that. One of our high school classmates posted a blurry photo of the boutique with a caption, cool idea, but the place felt half done. Someone else left a Google review that said, cute pieces but not ready for customers yet. Another one said, unorganized, felt rushed. Nothing nasty, just honest. Sunday afternoon, I got another call, this time from my dad. He asked if I could spot Natalie $2,000 to help stabilize things, maybe pay the vendor and cover a few late invoices. He said I'd be keeping the dream alive. I said no. That night, I got a voice message from Natalie. It was over 2 minutes long. I didn't listen to all of it, but the part I caught was her saying I had always wanted her to fail, that I'd never believed in her, and that this just proved it. She ended by saying she hoped I was happy now. I deleted the message, put my phone down, went outside and walked around the block twice. The sun was setting. It was quiet. I could hear birds. That was the moment it all clicked. This is what it looks like when you stop being the family's safety net. They don't fall all at once. They flail. They shout. They blame. They tell stories that make you the villain, but they still fall. Not because you pushed them, but because they never learned to stand. The week after the boutique's chaotic soft opening, Natalie kept the store running, but only barely. She opened late some days and closed early on others. Her hours changed daily, depending on when she could drag herself out of bed or find her charger. She posted updates on Instagram stories with sparkles and flower gifts, calling it a slow launch and a soft adjustment phase. The truth was, she had no staff. No part-timers, no interns, not even weekend help. She hadn't budgeted for employees. She said she was trying to get a feel for the flow before hiring. In reality, she was already behind on bills and couldn't afford payroll. A few vendors had pulled out by midweek. One artisan who made hand-dyed scarves came by to collect her inventory after not getting paid on time. Another canceled an upcoming consignment deal when Natalie asked if they could barter some items instead of paying cash. Still, she pushed ahead with a plan to host an experience event the next Saturday. She promised free wine, a DIY jewelry making station, and a mini pop-up booth in the corner. She promoted it with Canva graphics and hashtags. 3 people showed up. One was a friend of hers who left after 20 minutes. One stayed because they thought it was a completely different store. The third bought a $12 ring and left a polite great vibe comment on a post later. Natalie took a photo pretending to clink glasses with someone and captioned it, such a lovely day with inspiring women. That night, my parents called again. They wanted to know if I could come by the boutique for just one day and help her sort out her launch numbers. They floated the idea of a rebrand, maybe a relaunch event, and asked if I could just advise her, maybe clean up her vendor list and redo her budget. I told them I was prepping a big presentation at work and couldn't get sidetracked. That was true. My team was days away from launching a new onboarding system, and I had been pulling late nights to test final components. But even if I had been free, my answer wouldn't have changed. A few days later, I ran into someone who lived in an apartment above Natalie's shop. She recognized me from Instagram and said she felt bad for my sister. Then she looked at me and said, "But honestly, it's not your job to be her manager." That sentence stuck. When I was 17, Natalie forgot to submit her college financial aid forms. She cried and said she thought it auto-filled based on her enrollment. I spent the weekend forging copies of our family tax returns and calling her school pretending to be her. She got her aid. No one thanked me. It just became the routine. If Natalie missed something, I picked it up. If she fell behind, I caught her. If she forgot, I remembered. That weekend, Natalie announced she was doing a vendor booth at a local fair. Her idea was to sell small items and hand out business cards to drive traffic to the shop. The night before the event, she texted asking if I could drive over her boxes of inventory to the booth in the morning. I didn't respond right away. The next morning, I replied, "I can't. I have plans." No explanation, no apology, just that. It was the first time I hadn't padded my answer with reasons or softened the blow. Just a simple refusal. By noon, I got a message from my mom, "You could have just done this one thing. We raised you to be generous." I replied, "You raised me to be useful, not generous. That's different." No one answered after that. Natalie managed to get the inventory to the fair by dragging 2 boxes across a parking lot with a rolling laundry cart. A couple people posted photos of her booth. It looked sad. No tablecloth, hand-scribbled price tags, and flyers that had her old store hours listed. She made under $100 all day. Still, she posted a reel later with soft music and the caption "Hustling and Healing." No one asked me for anything the rest of the weekend. No calls, no guilt trips, no emergencies. Just quiet. And for the first time, that silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space. Natalie showed up to the fair early Saturday morning with 2 plastic bins of merchandise, a foldable table she borrowed from a neighbor, and a half-charged phone. She forgot her card reader, forgot her price tags, and didn't bring change for cash sales. Her sign was printed on regular printer paper, and her table had no cloth, no decor, just a random mix of earrings, mismatched tops, and ceramic planters. She called it a pop-up experience. Most people just walked past. The booth sat in direct sunlight all day. She didn't bring a tent or an umbrella, and her water bottle tipped over around noon, soaking part of her stock. A friend of hers stopped by and lent her a portable fan, which barely worked. She made $84 total, $35 of it from a woman who bought 3 items because she felt bad. Later that night, my parents called. Natalie had been crying on the phone with them for over an hour. She told them the business was dying, and she was embarrassed in front of everyone. She said she couldn't keep doing this alone. When my mom called me, she brought it up casually, said the whole thing might have gone differently if Natalie had proper support, that maybe she was spiraling now because she felt abandoned. I reminded her, clearly, that everyone knew from the start I wasn't involved. Natalie made her own timeline. She asked for advice. She didn't follow it. The next day, things got worse. Natalie left her unsold merchandise in her car overnight. A few items, some soy candles and bath scrubs, melted and leaked. The planters cracked. Some of the clothes picked up a weird plastic smell from the heat. She posted on Instagram that she was learning about climate-sensitive storage like it was a funny business lesson. Then, the boutique's back room flooded. A pipe burst in the unit above hers, and water poured down through the ceiling. The landlord's number was listed on her lease, but she hadn't saved it. By the time she got someone out to check the damage, the drywall was already soft. When asked about her business insurance, she admitted she never finalized it. The landlord told her she'd be responsible for part of the repair costs. If it wasn't covered by insurance, which it wasn't, he'd be within his rights to begin lease termination for damage negligence. By Tuesday evening, my dad called, said Natalie was in a bad place, said she was trying her best, asked if I could front $1,500 just to help her get through the next few weeks. I told him no. Again, that night, Natalie sent out a mass text to the extended family. She framed it as a call for small support and said she was trying to save her dream before it was too late. She added that she'd been left to do this all alone. Without the support system most people take for granted. It didn't mention me by name, but it didn't need to. A cousin reached out a day later and asked if I really wasn't helping at all. He said Natalie told him she felt abandoned, especially by me. A few hours after that, I got a call from an uncle I haven't spoken to since 2018. He didn't ask questions, just said he was disappointed I hadn't thrown her a rope. I didn't argue. I just let it land. By midweek, the boutique's doors were locked. A printed sign said closed for inventory review. The lights were off every time someone walked by. No posts, no stories, no explanations, just quiet. It was the same pattern as always. Build up, breakdown, silence. Natalie didn't want help. She wanted rescue, without questions, without accountability. And this time, none of us showed up with a ladder. The boutique stayed dark for over a week. No posts, no updates, nothing. People started noticing. A couple of Natalie's friends reached out to me through DMs, asking if she was okay. One asked if she'd shut the store permanently. Another said they walked by and saw the same closed for inventory review sign from last week. Still no lights on. Then, out of nowhere, my parents showed up at my apartment. No heads up, just knocked on the door around 8 p.m. My mom looked worried. My dad stood behind her, quiet. Natalie had moved back in with them. According to my mom, she wasn't eating properly, barely leaving her room, and hadn't spoken much in days. My mom gave me the kind of look that didn't ask, just expected. I said she wasn't my responsibility. She made her choices. My dad shook his head, said this wasn't who they raised me to be, and walked out without saying goodbye. The next day, my parents started calling some of Natalie's boutique contacts. One of the candle vendors messaged me thinking I was still involved with the business. She wanted to know if there was going to be a restock or if she should pull her name from the listing. I told her I wasn't part of the boutique, never had been, and she should direct any questions to Natalie. Then I hung up. A few days later, Natalie popped back up, but not in person. She started selling leftover inventory from her bedroom on a casual resale app. The listing photos had wrinkled clothes on the edge of her bed and ceramic pots placed on an old shoebox. She priced things low, $8, $5, even a few free with pickup items. Her listings were captioned things like lightly used from closed shop, help support a restart. My parents told me they gave her another $5,000. They didn't phrase it like that. They said it was just to get her through the lease repairs and damages. Same thing. I didn't argue. Somewhere along the way, Natalie decided my silence meant I hated her. I didn't say anything, didn't send messages, didn't comment on her posts. She took it as cruelty, not a boundary, not a limit, just cruelty. A couple mutual friends stopped replying to me too. Slowly, one left a group chat. Another said she felt caught in the middle. I didn't push. At work, things were different. Our project launch went smoothly. My department head called me out in a meeting for managing timelines better than expected. A couple team members brought in coffee the next morning as a thank you. Clean praise, no drama, just results. That night, I got an email from Natalie. The subject line was blank. The message was 5 words. You win. Happy now? I didn't reply. There wasn't anything left to say. 2 weeks after the email, Natalie posted an Instagram story with a white background and lowercase text, taking a break from capitalism burnout, reevaluating what truly matters. Underneath was a photo of a journal, a candle, and a glass of tea next to a windowsill. That was the new storyline. No more boutique updates. No follow-up on the store closure. No mention of the flooded back room, damaged goods, or unpaid vendors. Just a clean shift into a healing phase. A few days later, my parents started repeating the same phrases. How Natalie was too creative for the rigid business world. How some people just aren't made for spreadsheets and deadlines. No one brought up the $5,000. No one brought up how Natalie had ignored basic advice on budgeting, vendor contracts, or lease agreements. Every time I gave a heads up before the store opened, every spreadsheet template I offered, every warning I gave, they vanished from the family memory like they never happened. At my cousin's birthday dinner, I sat at the end of the table. Natalie didn't come, but our mom did. I overheard her telling one of our aunts that Natalie was just too sensitive for all that pressure and wasn't meant to be boxed in by conventional paths. My aunt nodded, like she understood. Someone passed the bread. No one looked at me. I left early, got in the car and drove home without saying much. turned my phone off for the night. A couple days later, a longtime friend of mine called. Not one of the mutuals, someone I've known since college. She said she saw the posts and the family comments and just wanted to say, I would have snapped by now if I were you. That was the only thing I heard all week that didn't sound upside down. My parents came over the weekend after that. They said they were worried I was closing myself off emotionally. My dad added that I've always been the strong one but shouldn't let that make me cold. I asked them a question. When I needed you to acknowledge what I was carrying, where were you? They went silent. Later that week, Natalie launched a blog. It was linked in her Instagram bio and filled with vague posts about starting over, feeling invisible in loud families, and carrying invisible weights. There were moody photos of foggy windows, late-night walks, and captions about misunderstood women. My mom shared one of the posts on Facebook with the caption, "So proud of how she's finding her voice." I didn't read it. I didn't click, didn't like, didn't ask about it. I kept my head down at work, got through my meetings, and made sure my team hit all our deadlines for the quarter. Last Sunday, my parents invited me over for lunch. Toward the end of the meal, they brought up the topic of the family trust, said they were thinking about how to keep things even between me and Natalie. They used the word fair a lot. They didn't explain details, just floated the idea that it might be good if I helped Natalie with her next chapter if anything ever came up. I told them clearly I don't want anything unless it's being offered without strings. I'm not here to balance anyone's life. I'm not the fixer anymore. They didn't push. That was the first time I saw it click behind their eyes, that my help wasn't coming. Not now, not next year, not at the next meltdown. And they were finally going to have to live with that. 6 months passed. The boutique never reopened. The lease ended quietly in February. By March, the space had been cleared out and replaced with a small plant shop. New sign, fresh paint, potted succulents in the window. No trace of Natalie's store left behind. No one in the family brought it up. The boutique stopped existing in conversation, like it never happened. Not a single word about the money, the mess, or the vendors left unpaid. It was scrubbed from memory. In early spring, there was a family dinner. Natalie showed up smiling, wearing big headphones around her neck and carrying a new leather notebook. She was full of energy. Her latest project was a podcast about creative burnout and reimagining ambition. She called it a healing space for misunderstood women. My parents nodded proudly while she talked about potential guests and theme music. There was no mention of the boutique, no mention of what happened, or how it ended. She told the story like she walked away on purpose, to find clarity and alignment. The narrative was clean, smooth, and completely disconnected from reality. I listened. I ate. I smiled when appropriate. I didn't join the conversation. Toward the end of the meal, my dad brought up an old memory. He said, "Remember when you two used to run lemonade stands together?" Natalie laughed and said I always took it too seriously, like it was a real business. Everyone chuckled. Later that night, my mom found me in the kitchen while I was rinsing a dish. She said, "Casually, you two will come back around. You've always balanced each other." I dried my hands and said, "No, I've always carried her. That's not balance." She blinked once. Didn't argue. Just changed the subject and walked away. A week later, I got an email from Natalie. It was long, several paragraphs, outlining a pitch for her podcast. She wanted help editing audio and managing the back end. She wrote, "It would mean a lot to have you on board, like old times." I replied with one sentence, "You're capable of doing this yourself. Good luck." There was no response, no follow-up, no guilt message, just silence. That night, I sat at my desk, finishing up a side project I'd been working on for months. I didn't feel cruel. I didn't feel angry. I felt clean. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't the safety net, and I was completely unapologetically fine with that.